right, what is going on, everybody? How is everybody doing today? Welcome back here today to, I guess, the episode 4 now of the Just Ballin' podcast here. My name is Matt. I guess you guys kind of already knew that. But yeah, basically, I guess I'll keep saying that it's every episode going into it, since this is kind of like the rebrand of the Just Ballin' podcast. If you have been following closely on either Spotify or Apple Podcasts, you may have known that I got the original RSS link back, which is kind of cool because this is the original, I guess, podcast feed that the Just Ballin' podcast was on in 2020. Obviously, if you're watching on YouTube, you may not know what that means, but if you're listening on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, you know it's where, I guess, the fourth most recent episode was from 2020, and we were in the midst of the pandemic, and it's kind of wild that this is kind of where we are almost 4 years later. So yeah, the podcast feed will look a little bit different. There might be 36 episodes over there. It's because it's going to kind of be combined with what it looked like in 2020. So hope you guys have been enjoying the podcast so far. Please, if you have any constructive criticism, love to hear your thoughts about it. The setup, I know a couple of you guys in the comments, so shout out to you guys that mentioned it. It was the wall behind you is kind of bland. So it's still a work in progress. I have this kind of bench thing if you're watching on YouTube to my right thing, or it's a table that's kind of broken. It's getting moved out of the way, hopefully for the next episode. I think I might just get some plants or something. I think that could complete it. And behind me is a poster I found, which honestly I kind of like a lot. So it might be kind of tough for you guys to see on YouTube, but it's basically how NBA jerseys have looked all the way from, I believe the first year is 1921. Okay, so it's all the way back to the first Celtics jersey, all the way to 2021. So it's basically 100 years of NBA jerseys, and it's a visual of all of them over time. So there's some of my favorite. I'm a Knicks fan, so it's got the 2006 Knicks St. Patrick's Day. If you're on YouTube, it is going to be a little bit tough to see because there is a glare from it right now. But yeah, that's what's basically behind me, and it's obviously all players jersey as well. It's that green St. Patrick's Day one is the Nate Robinson one. There's a DeMar DeRozan OBO alternate one. There's the Clippers LA Times ones from recently in 2019. Obviously 2012 Nuggets, 2007 Hornets, which will remind you of Chris Paul. So it's pretty cool, 98 T-Wolves, Kevin Garnett's jersey, 98 Sixers, that's Allen Iverson. So that is pretty cool. That's what's behind me right now. And a lot of you guys also asked me, if you're on YouTube as well, what is this kind of, screen here that kind of toggles through NBA scores, standings. It's called a tidbit. It's TIDBYT. I got it as a gift. And yeah, that's what basically that thing is. And you can have different scores from different leagues. But we'll get into kind of the NBA here now. I guess before we hop into the meat and the potatoes of the episode, that's going to be contenders and pretenders. So I'm basically going over every team that has a chance at really making the playoffs. Can they really contend for a championship this year? Or is this basically a first, second round exit? Or maybe at their peak, they make it to the conference finals, but they really didn't have a shot. They kind of just ended up catching steam or momentum at the right time. Maybe you could compare them to the 2022 Mavericks, right? A team that beat the Suns, but we didn't really think that they had the chance to go all the way, but they did make it to a conference final. So, yeah, also, the whole Isaiah Stewart thing is kind of wild. I still, we still don't know what the video looks like. If that video is, out there, it's going to be insane. It may break, NBA internet just because he got arrested for assault. He, rocked Drew Eubanks in the face in the tunnels before the game. Such a random beef, too. I mean, we knew Isaiah Stewart kind of had this in him. He was known for the infamous charge at LeBron with blood running down his face from a couple years ago, or that might even been last year. But yeah, he was known for that. Obviously, he's a very tough player and a player you probably don't want to mess with. And yeah, Drew Eubanks just kind of seems like some weird beef kind of going on with that. The Warriors moved Klay Thompson to the bench, and he had a fantastic game against the Jazz. So they have a little bit of momentum going into the All-Star break, hopefully that they can kind of sort it out then with just kind of the new starting lineup they have. The Knicks have been struggling a lot as of late, too. This is kind of mainly due to injuries they've had with Julius Randle and OG Anunoby. And we're going to get into some of these teams as well going forward. And the Bucks. The Bucks is also the Grizzlies, man. The Grizzlies, a team led by Gigi Jackson, Jacob Gilyard, Santi Aldama, and Jared Jackson Jr. didn't play. Desmond Bane was out. Marcus Smart was out. Obviously, John Morant's out. I can't believe it. Giannis and Dame played. What? What? I don't even know. Doesn't really make any sense. So yeah, we're basically going to go through every team that I think can even be in the conversation here. So for example, the Jazz and the Warriors are kind of jockeying for that 10th spot. I'm not going to talk about the Jazz. We know that they have a 0% chance of winning a championship. Could be the same said about the Warriors, who honestly could be our first team right now that we want to talk about, that I think we could bring up to discussion. They're 27 and 26. Obviously, we have to give them the respect because they won it all in 22. They still have one of the best players in the league and of all time in Steph Curry, and they're the Golden State Warriors. They've been the best team in the NBA since 2014, and we got to at least give them the credit. I mean, this year currently, they are the 8th best offensive team. They are the 20th defensive team. They're 12th in net rating in the league. Obviously, they've had an up and down season with a lot of their veterans. I mean, Clay's inconsistencies. He's up to 37% on threes this season, but shooting 42% from the field. Defense has taken a step back. Draymond got suspended multiple times, but he's looked great since he's came back as a facilitator, as kind of the floor general of that offense outside of Steph Curry, and obviously the quarterback of that defense too, the middle linebacker, you could say. That would make more sense. I'm just kind of running that show there and being so impactful that doesn't show up in the box score. So the Warriors have been great as of late. I still am going to list them as a pretender. I don't think that they're going to have enough firepower to really get it done and go up with some of these teams against the Western Conference. I think you're relying a little bit too much on Brandon Podziemski. I think you're relying a lot on Jonathan Kuminga, who is really good, but we should have seen him with this kind of role last year or maybe earlier in the year. But he's been great as of late. We'll see. I mean, Wiggins has been playing better as of late as well. This team could catch some fire and some momentum, but I don't want to give out contenders to like every single team. I don't want to do that. I want to make it feel somewhat prestigious. So it may come down to like 2, 3, maybe 4 teams a conference. And I don't think right now that Golden State is a top 4 team fully healthy. Now, you get them in a 7-game playoff series, it could be completely different. Obviously, last year they lost in round 2 to the Lakers, but you add in a kind of breaking out, emerging Jonathan Kuminga, you add in a rookie Brandon Podziemski, things could look different, but I still think they lack a lot of size as well. So I'm going to list the Warriors as a pretender. We'll just go back and forth, one East, one West. So like obviously, I don't think like the Hawks are going to be contenders in the conversation. I don't think we can consider the Chicago Bulls to be in that conversation as well, being 3 games under 500. We could just kind of do this as every team above 500. So we'll start off with the Orlando Magic. They are 30-25 right now. They are still a top 5 defense in the league. They are not a great offensive team, though, overall compared to the rest of the league. They're about average in terms of net rating. Obviously, I'm going to list them as a pretender. I mean, this season, they've exceeded expectations. They're playing with house money at this point, and they're just happy to be there. If they're the 8th seed and they lose in 5 games to the Boston Celtics, they will take that. They've seen Paolo Banchero be an all-star in year 2. They're seeing the progressions and jumps from guys in the 2021 draft class in Franz Wagner and Jalen Suggs. Wendell Carter Jr. was hurt to start the year. He's been a little bit better as of late. Cole Anthony's been a solid scorer off the bench. Goga Bitadze looks like he could be rotational big. There are the foundations and pieces of this Magic team, and it's perfectly okay to not win a playoff series this year. But I think it would be a little disappointing just because of the start they had if they don't make it to the playoffs and they do lose in the play-in tournament. So we'll go back to the Western Conference here. We'll talk about the LA Lakers, the current 9th seed in the Western Conference. They're 30-26. They have the same record. 3 more wins than the Warriors. The Warriors are 27-26. The Lakers are a 19th best offensive team in the league. They're the 14th best defensive team. So they're kind of a below average team overall. We know that they didn't make a move at the deadline. I want to give a shout out to D'Angelo Russell, who over his last 10 to 15 games has been averaging 24 points on great efficiency. Always, I got to respect LeBron. And last year, going into the playoffs, we probably had them as a contender, even as they were a 7th seed. They beat the 2-seeded Grizzlies in round 1. They beat the 6-seeded Warriors in round 2, but then got swept by the Nuggets, albeit it was a close sweep in the conference finals. It's LeBron James at the end of the day. You put him and Anthony Davis healthy in a 7-game playoff series. It's hard to bet against them. I just don't think the underlying metrics are there where they were last year. And I think they've dealt with their injuries. I wonder how Austin Reeves will step up in the playoffs. I mean, he played phenomenal in the playoffs last year. And if Reeves and Russell can at least be somewhat positive defensively, and obviously we know that they're good offensively, and then you have LeBron and AD, and then you figure out who's the hot hand to put there. I know they picked up Spencer Dinwiddie in the buyout market. I don't want to put them in as a contender. I don't. But at the end of the day, it is LeBron James. So this is the one pretender that I'm like, okay, if you want to just tell me in the comments that they should be a contender, they have LeBron James. They have one of the best players of all time. And we can never count him out. That's fine. I'm cool with that. So I'm going to list them as a pretender, though. So we're going to jump to the Eastern Conference here. We'll go back to the Miami Heat. We'll stay in the state of Florida for the East. They're 30-25. We know that they're not much of a regular season team. They're 8th in defense, 22nd in offense. Rozier had a scary looking injury. It looks like he'll be fine. They've had their fair share of injuries this year as well. To Jimmy, to Hero, obviously, like I just said, to Rozier. Caleb Martin's dealt with injuries as well. Nikola Jovic has not been breaking out this season, but he's shown flashes in year 2. And this team, I don't know if they're going to add anybody throughout the buyout market. I know the Bucks just added Gallo. But yeah, this team turns it up a notch in the playoffs, and they went to the NBA Finals last year without Tyler Hero. They beat the Bucks. They beat the Knicks. They beat the Celtics. It was an incredible run for Miami. I don't know if I want to list them as a contender, but do I really think that they are any worse than the second best team in the East? No. So, you know what? I'm going to list the Miami Heat as a contender. I do. I think the East is kind of wide open. I do. I think Boston is a clear one, and we'll get to that later. But with Milwaukee's struggles, and they do not look like they are the same team from last year, and now they have Doc Rivers as their head coach, was a negative in my opinion. I'd rather have just seen Adrian Griffin or Joe Pruney or whoever was going to be the interim coach go for this team instead of Doc Rivers. And I think Miami could beat Milwaukee in a 7-game playoff series. Milwaukee's defense is bad. Damian Lillard has been playing poorly as well. Now, Dame could turn it up a notch in the playoffs. But if I'm going to list Milwaukee as a contender later on, and I think Miami could beat Milwaukee in a playoff series, there's my answer. I'm going to say Miami is a contender as a 7th seed right now. So we'll go to the Western Conference. We'll talk about the Sacramento Kings. They're a pretender. I think if they made a move at the deadline, I think if this team added an OG Anunoby or a Pascal Siakam this year, maybe even a healthy Zach LaVine, maybe, I would be like, okay, they could definitely make a run. I just think they lack the firepower as well. Will Keegan Murray get kind of timid? Will he be able to step up as a number 3 option if Fox or Sabonis is not on one for the playoffs? Malik Monk, I think, would win 6th Man of the Year right now. It's a good team. It's a team that could win a playoff series. They are currently 31-23. They're the 18th best or 18th ranked defensive team, 14th ranked offensive team. So they're kind of an average team throughout the league this season. I don't think they're going to be a finals team this year. So I am going to list the Kings as a pretender. I'm sorry, Kings fans. We'll go to the Indiana Pacers. 6th seed in the East, 31-25. They're still abysmal defensively. They've been a little bit better since adding Siakam. 25th ranked defensive team, but they're the 2nd ranked offensive team. Halliburton's getting fully healthy again. And if this team didn't add Siakam, I'd be like, all right, complete pretender. I think they're a 1st-round exit. I still think they are a pretender. I don't think I could say that the Pacers are in that tier, that one tier in the Eastern Conference, even though they've been great this year. And Halliburton has been a top 10 player in the league, arguably. And Siakam, they added at the deadline, who's a perennial kind of like top 25, 30 guy in the league for the last couple of seasons. And Miles Turner's still an elite rim protector. It's a good team. I could talk myself into it, but I don't think I will. I think this, like the defense, like in the playoffs where the game gets slowed down, defensive matters a ton. There's less foul calls, and you can't rely too much. Like, obviously, the 2nd best offensive team will carry in that offense in the playoffs, but you need to step up somewhat defensively, and I'm a little bit worried on how that's going to look for the Pacers. So, for that reason, I'm going to list them as a pretender, and I don't think that they are going to be able to win a championship this season. Could they win a playoff series? Yes. We saw them win the in-season tournament without Pascal Siakam. Could they win 2 playoff series? I'm not going to say it's impossible. This team could be a conference finals exit team if they match up with Boston and Boston beats them. Yeah, that could be maybe the 2021 Hawks or the 2022 Mavericks. Could it be a team last year? Yeah, it could be the 2023 Lakers or something like that. So that could definitely be the Pacers this year, for sure. But I don't think that they're going to win a championship. Now, Dallas made some nice moves at the deadline. They picked up P.J. Washington. They picked up Daniel Gafford. Oh, man, the West is as wide open. It might even be more wide open in the East. That's why it kind of pained me to say that the Lakers were pretenders. But I'm going to say that the Mavericks are also going to be pretenders. I still get a little bit worried about this defense. I also think that they can't withstand injuries that some of these other teams in the West can. And I know I sound like maybe a hater because I had them 15th in my power rankings post the deadline. And that's perfectly fine to hate on me for that. I think I was a little bit low on them for sure. I think I could have had them in that, like, 11 to 13 tier. I don't know if I could still call them a top 10 team in the league, but I think that they could definitely have been a little bit higher. So, hey, that's on me. I don't want to be a hater for that, and I think I should take into account what they did at the deadline. They're still a good offensive team. They're an average defensive team, which is good, and they added Gafford, and Washington's going to help their offense on that side of the floor. But I don't think that they are a finals contender. Tim Hardaway Jr. is way too inconsistent to be your number 3 option, and then who's stepping up offensively? Is it going to be P.J. Washington? I don't think so. Is it going to be Josh Green, Dante Exum, Derek Jones? Nobody's creating your own shot. Now, with the usage that Kyrie and Luka has, you don't really need that. But I'm just saying injuries, foul trouble, second units. I'm a little worried about Dallas as a whole. So I'm going to say Dallas is going to be a pretender. Like I said before, I don't want to give too many teams the contender kind of title threshold. So I'm going to go with that there. Now, Philadelphia. They're the fifth seed in the East. They got off to a good start this season. Maxey looked phenomenal, ended up being an all-star. Embiid looked like an MVP candidate. He looked like he was the front runner to go back-to-back. But Embiid's injuries, it's a little scary. They added Buddy Hield at the deadline. He's been great for them. They're a top 10 offensive team this year. They're a borderline top 10 defensive team. The Sixers are good when everybody's healthy, but that's a big if when everybody's healthy. Buddy Hield's played in 4 games for the Sixers, and he's averaging 22 points, shooting 45% from 3. Dude's kind of been a beast for them. And who knows, maybe he gets extended there. And it's kind of cool to see Buddy Hield be a top scoring option right now. Like, I think he's more reliable than Tobias Harris. Obviously, he's the number 2 behind Maxey. But, like, in Sacramento, he was always behind De'Aaron Fox, and then kind of Halliburton when he came in, and then they had Harrison Barnes as well. And then in Indiana, he was always behind Halliburton, and he was kind of in that second wave of, like, Miles Turner, and then also, I guess you could say, like, Aaron Nesmith, Bruce Brown, Benedict Mathurin. Like, it was just, like, a plethora of guys in, like, that number 2 spots. But it's going to be cool to see him kind of be as, like, the full number 2. And it's not like Maxey's a perennial number 1. There could be nights where Hield gets more shots up than Maxey. But I'm going to say the Sixers are a pretender. It's really because of Joel Embiid's health. If he's not even 100%, if he's not even 60% of his full self in the playoffs, I'm a little worried. And we've also never seen the Sixers make it to the conference finals with Embiid as their number 1 guy. So I have to see it before I can believe it. And I'm not going to say that the Sixers will be a contender, especially with the health issues to Embiid. And they didn't really add. I mean, they added Buddy Hield at the deadline. They didn't add maybe a Caruso, maybe a bigger name. But they're a good team. They could win a playoff series. But, like, they couldn't make it to the conference finals with Embiid. Now you're giving me maybe an injured Embiid. We'll see how healthy he is for the playoffs. I'm a little worried. That's why I'm going to list them as a pretender. So we're going to go over to the West again. We'll talk about the Phoenix Suns, who are currently listed as the 6th seed in the West. This is a tough team. They are pretty average defensively. They're a top 10 offensive team. They've kind of been hovering around 10 this year. They added, who did they add at the deadline? They added Royce O'Neal at the deadline. I feel like they got a buyout name as well. Why am I tripping on who they added in the buyout market? I feel like they added a buyout guy, but I can't remember off the top of my head who they added. So I'm going to take a quick break and see if they added somebody. Okay, yeah, it was Thad Young. I knew they added somebody, and I was going to be mad at myself if I didn't figure out who it was. So they added Thad Young. I don't really think he's going to really make much of a difference. They just needed some big man depth. So obviously, they have a 1 and 2 that can go against anybody in this league. With Kevin Durant and Devin Booker. Bradley Beal is still a great number 3. Grayson Allen's been one of the best 3-point shooters in the league this year. Eric Gordon is a fine spark plug off the bench. Nurkic leaves a lot to be desired on the defensive side of the floor as a big man. So that's what I'm a little bit worried for the Suns team. And with KD, they lost to the Nuggets in round 2 last year. I don't know, man. I was going to list them as a pretender, but I could talk myself into them being a contender just with the star power they have. Frank Vogel is the head coach. I don't know, man. They added, I don't think Royce O'Neal or Thad Young are needle movers by any means, or David Roddy, but this team with its top-end talent is so good. It's so good. Now, I'm going to map out kind of in my mind who I have as these contenders and pretenders. Like, I think I'm going to have, all right, maybe I'll do 4 contenders in each conference. Maybe that's how it's going to end up. And you know what? I've already given, I guess, just 1 out to the Miami Heat. I didn't give it to the Lakers and the Warriors. I will give it to the Phoenix Suns. I will. I know they beat the Warriors beat them. But I think with that star power in a 7-game playoff series, if they're healthy, oh man, do I want to give it to them? Yeah, I will. They're going to be one of the 4 spots. I'm going to give it to the Phoenix Suns. I did not think I was going to do that, but I'm going to talk myself into it. So let's go to the New York Knicks here, in the East. Damn, I'm going to sound like a homer, but I wanted to list them as a contender just because this team, when healthy, is going to be really good. They're a top 10 offensive team. They're a top 10 defensive team. They were able to win some games without Randall, and then Anunoby gets hurt. Isaiah Hartenstein's been hurt. Dante DiVincenzo's been hurt. Bojan Bogdanovic has been hurt. Mitchell Robinson is going to be out for majority of the season. This team has been just decimated with injuries this year. Decimated. But they're still staying afloat in the East, and I think when they get fully healthy, this team could win a championship. I do. I'm going to sound like a homer, but I think that they're better than Indiana. I guess if I'm going to do 4 in each conference, I guess I have to, at the end of the day, decide between Cleveland and New York. And I think, you know what, my tiebreaker is going to go to is the Knicks beat them last year. They did. Are both teams better than last year? Yes. While the Cavs are better, and Jared Allen has taken a step, Evan Mobley's fully healthy again, same with Garland, and Mitchell's playing like a top 10 guy in the league. The Knicks also added OG Anunoby and Bojan Bogdanovic. Like, those are pretty nice additions. And Dante DiVincenzo from last year. The Cavs added Max Strus. They've added Georges Niang, Craig Porter Jr. But Yeah, I think at the end of the day, I'm going to take the Knicks over them. So I guess that kind of spoils my Cavs one as a pretender. I'm going to list the Knicks as a contender. I will. I don't want to hold myself to a certain threshold, like where I could. You know what? Why am I doing that? I'm going to make the Cavs a contender as well. I think there could be 5 contending teams in the Eastern Conference for sure. I know I wanted to hold this as a prestigious title. I'm going to give it to more than half of the teams in the East, but that are going to make the playoffs. But you know what? I think the Cavs can win a championship. I do. Obviously, these teams need to get matched up perfectly to maybe have a certain path to the finals. Like, obviously, if one of these teams got Milwaukee round 1, that'd be a very tough round 1 matchup, or a healthy Embiid. That would be very tough. But I'm going to say that the Cavs are also going to be a contender. I mean, they've been too good without Garland and Mobley that I think I need to give them some respect. And why am I holding myself to some arbitrary number of 4 teams? I'm going to give it to them. They've been an average offensive team, but they've been an absolute elite defensive team on the backs of Jared Allen. And they got Evan Mobley back. You know what? I think they could beat anybody. I think they could beat the Celtics in a 7-game series. They could beat the Knicks. They could beat the Bucks. So yeah, I kind of knocked out the Sixers from that tier. And we have the Heat, we have the Knicks, and we have the Cavs in as contenders in the East. Let's run through the Pelicans really quickly. Pretender for me. Been a good team this year. Been pretty solid on both sides of the floor. Top 10 defensive team. Top 15 offensive team. Will Zion be healthy? I don't know. They didn't add at the deadline. They still lack some defense at that interior spot at the big man position. I don't know how good Jonas Valanciunas is going to go going up against some of the good big men in the Western Conference, like Gobert, Kat, Jokic, Holmgren. This team is good. They're respectable. They'd be a pesky first-round matchup team, but I don't think that they're going to win a finals this year. So the Pelicans are going to be a pretender. I've done one more Eastern Conference team because I didn't do the Atlanta Hawks like a 10 seed. So we'll go over to the Denver Nuggets. We'll stay in the West for this one. The Nuggets, obviously a contender. They're the reigning NBA champions. Their offense has been maybe not as elite this year. They've still been a respectable defensive team, but I think they will turn it up in a notch in the playoffs. I think like maybe Jamal Murray is kind of like that guy as well. He'll just turn it up a notch in the playoffs, become a top 10 guy, maybe a top 15 guy when it matters the most. And I think the Nuggets have the best player in the league. It's Nikola Jokic, the reigning champions. He's the reigning finals MVP. I like their draft picks of Julian Strawther. I did like Jalen Pickett and Hunter Tyson. Obviously, we're probably not going to see them in the playoffs, but KCP is still a great role player. Same with Michael Porter Jr. as a complimentary piece. Aaron Gordon as a complimentary piece. And Peyton Watson's taking us up this year. So the Nuggets, obviously a contender. I got to give the reigning champions some respect here. So we'll talk about the Milwaukee Bucks, who I'm going to still have listed as a contender. This team could still win a championship. I'm not going to say that they're out, but they've been worse this year defensively. They're closer to being like the 20th best defensive team. They are still an elite offensive team. Obviously, with Damian Lillard at the starting point guard spot, makes a lot of sense. He's been still an elite number 2 for them this year. Middleton has dealt with some injuries. We haven't really seen the coaches care too much about the progression of Marjon Beauchamp and Andre Jackson. Malik Beasley, elite 3-point shooter. But at the end of the day, they have Giannis Antetokounmpo. They have Giannis. They have like the pedigree. They won the championship in 21. Still have a couple of those guys from that championship team like Bobby Portis, Brook Lopez, and Chris Middleton. So I think that they will be a contender, but they have to get their shit together. They do, especially on the defensive side of the floor. And Dame has been too inconsistent for, honestly, a decent sample size. Like 20 games, that's a decent sample size. He's going to have to get his shit together for the playoffs. But I'm going to list them as a contender. So in the East, we have the Heat, we have the Bucks, we have the Cavs and the Knicks. And then I'll also say that the Celtics are obviously going to be a contender. Now, they're a team that has come up short plenty of times in the Jason Tatum Celtics era, but they are the best offensive team in the league. They're the 3rd best defensive team in the league. They're healthy starting and closing 5 of Holiday, White, Brown, Tatum, and Porzingis are 5 all-star players. Those are 5 all-star or borderline all-star players like Derek White, Drew Holiday, Kristaps Porzingis, borderline all-stars. And if you don't want to say Drew Holiday is an all-star, well, he's still one of the best defensive players in the league, and you're adding him with Derek White in that backcourt. He's insane. Kristaps has been great on both ends of the floor this year. Obviously, Tatum is an MVP guy, and Brown is as good as the number 2 as you can ask for. This team, the only thing that's holding it back is themselves. Like, just them last year, going down 3-0, coming back down to go to a Game 7, but losing. Losing to the Warriors in 2022 after being up in that series. And then just kind of countless just mistakes in the playoffs. But they're still the best team, in my opinion, in the league, at least on paper and throughout this regular season. So I'm going to list them as a contender. So I do have 5 contenders in the East. I do think the East, I think it's a little wide open this year. I do. So coming here, I did list the Suns. I mean, that could be my one team I shouldn't have given the contender spot to, because you could say like the Lakers or the Warriors would beat them in a 7-game series. So, I'm going to stand on my take. I give the Nuggets a contender spot. I don't think I'm going to give all of Minnesota, OKC, and the Clippers. And to be honest with you, I'm going to give the Clippers a contender spot. They have the star power. They have the veteran experience. James Harden's been in some big games, never played in the finals, but been in big games. Same with Paul George. Kawhi Leonard, obviously multiple-time finals MVP. Russell Westbrook has played in some big playoff games. He's played in the finals before. Actually, I lied. I just lied there. I said Harden's never played in the finals. Sorry about that. He did do that in OKC in 2012. But this team is good, man. They've been playing phenomenal basically since the second week of the James Harden Clippers era. They are one of the best offensive teams in the league. They're a very respectable defensive team. Ty Lue's won a championship as well in 2016 with the Cavs. I think the Clippers are a contender in the Western Conference, and they may be the favorite in the West once we get to the end of the season. They're 36-17. So now it comes down between the T-Wolves and the Thunder. And to be honest with you, I think I'm going to list both as pretenders. I do. I think so. I think Minnesota is really good. Don't get me wrong. They're the best defensive team in the league. And I think what could be like the flip, I know I said that the game slows down and defense matters a ton in the playoffs when I was talking about the Pacers. And I think it will. And I think that's why the Timberwolves will win a playoff series. I think they'll win their round 1 matchup. But I don't know. I think Anthony Edwards is also going to be one of the best playoff performers in his generation. But I don't think that this team wins a championship. I don't think if they get matched up with the Clippers, if they get matched up with the Nuggets, the Suns, I do think that they're going to get outmatched a little bit in the experience fold. Like we've seen it before, Rudy Gobert gets played off the floor in the playoffs because teams do not have to guard him, and that can really mess up team spacing at all, and it could get kind of crowded in there for the Wolves. We could see what adjustments Chris Finch makes from the Nuggets series last year, but I'm a little bit nervous about the Timberwolves, and I'm going to list them as a pretender. Hot take, I know. I think some T-Wolves or fans were definitely upset with me with my ranking in the post-trade deadline power rankings. But to be honest with you, I don't want to hand this out like candy, and I'm going to list them as a pretender. I do. But if you want to look at me and be like, Matt, you listed the Knicks as a contender, but the Timberwolves aren't, that's fine with me. That's fine with me. And if you want to remove the Cavs and the Knicks from that, that's fine. But I'm going to stand on my take. And the Knicks beat the Timberwolves with OG Anunoby. They did. It was at the Garden, and it was, I believe, OG's first game as a Knick too. But the Knicks have to get fully healthy. And the last team we'll talk about are the OKC Thunder. They're the 6th best defensive team, 4th best offensive team. They may have the MVP frontrunner right now in Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. You know what though? I'm gonna list them as a contender. I am. I think they are better than Minnesota when it comes down to it at the end of the day. They've had some bad losses this season, but I think if I'm going to give it to one of the Minnesota Thunder team or Minnesota or OKC teams, I'm going to give it to OKC just because they have the best player in that series in Shai. They now have a good big man that they can match up with Cat and or Gobert in the playoffs. And J-Dub is arguably better than Karl Anthony Towns right now. He arguably is. So I don't want to hear that maybe the Timberwolves have the second best player. I think J-Dub could be a better playoff performer than Cat going forward. So definitely some hot takes to end the video right there. My contenders were the Heat, Knicks, Cavs, Celtics, and Bucks in the East. Those 5. In the West, I had the Suns, Clippers, Nuggets, and Thunder. I just don't see the Timberwolves winning it. Now, if you want to even be thinner with this, I would just say it's the Celtics, the Bucks, and the Heat in the East, and I would just say it's the Nuggets and the Clippers of the West, if we really want to trim it down, okay? Well, if that would make you happy, we could do that. But that was fun. That was a challenge to myself. I had some issues with that. I think I'm going to go back and kind of like look at this later on and like, did I agree with this? Did I disagree with this? Because I wrote this all out before. And then as I'm kind of talking to you guys, I'm changing my mind on the spot. So if you guys are on YouTube, I would love to know your contenders in the comments. And don't say it's 16 teams that are contenders. Give me your contenders in the comments. And if you're on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, I'm not even sure if there's like a Q&A, something that you can fill out, because I'd love to know. But if not, just let me know on Twitter, twitter.com/6ringsofsteel. So you can kind of look at me over there as well and just kind of let me know what your thoughts are. So I hope you guys did enjoy. Drop a like if you did enjoy on YouTube. If you're on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, I would really appreciate a rating and review if I kind of made your last half an hour go by a little bit quicker. Either you were maybe driving a little bit at the gym, or maybe just kind of grinding out some work. So I hope I can make your day a little bit better. Thank you guys for the support, and I'll see you guys in the next episode. Peace.